Hello, my name is Violations, Threats over the World Wide Web. First, I'll start with my problem identification and analysis. So, what are the things that I know about the case? Well, Roosevelt High School and its principal, Principal Forbes, have an excellent and prestigious reputation, which Principal Forbes is guarding quite closely. Also, there's a new science teacher, Miss Walker, who teaches in a very serious manner, and this is causing some problems with students, especially giving them a lot of stress because the students in her classes actually, are advanced students, and they're all seeking to get really good grades and go on to college. So, also, parents have called Principal Forbes concerned about Miss Walker's classes. They want to make sure that their children are being treated fairly and are able to get the best grades possible. Apparently, some of these students are getting their worst grades they've ever had in Miss Walker's class. And Principal Forbes has discussed techniques with Miss Walker to help her reduce the student stress and to create a better atmosphere in her classroom. But according to the case, she has not been successful in implementing these techniques. Also, recently, Miss Walker, on a Sunday evening, I think, received an email, and this email directed her to a website that was commenting on her as a person, so her personal behaviors, and criticizing her classes with swear words. And the final statement on the website was, "Who wants Miss Walker to disappear?" So this is like a threat for her life. So Miss Walker, of course, was scared and nervous and all of the above, and she called her principal, Principal Forbes, and asked him what they should do. And Principal Forbes said, "Okay, calm down. I don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you send me the link and I'll look at the website and then we can talk from there." So Miss Walker sent him the link and he looked at it. He called her back and he said, "You know, I think that this is probably just a prank. We shouldn't take it too seriously. It's not a real threat, but I'll print out some copies and tomorrow morning we can talk to some students. You know, are there any students that you have a hard time with?" And Miss Walker said, "Yes, there's this one student who's always giving me a hard time in class, but I can never catch him in the act. But I bet it's him who did this. He knows a lot about computers." And so they're going to talk to him tomorrow. And that's how Principal Forbes left it. He didn't offer any other support. He actually also told her that if they needed to, they would ask the district technologist to find out where the email originated. So, that's what I know. What I would like to know, some extra information that would be helpful to kind of round out my knowledge about the case, is whether or not Roosevelt High School has an anti-bullying program. So if these students are aware of the consequences of bullying, what the typical response to bullying has been in the past in Roosevelt High School, if the high school has clear internet usage rules that have been presented and explained to the parents and the students, so everyone is on the same page as to what bullying is, what cyberbullying is, etc. And as far as teaching goes, I would really like to know how much support or mentoring poor Miss Walker received or didn't receive in her first year of teaching. It seems like she's struggling a lot. So, taking in mind what I know and what I'd like to know, I think that the main problem is that in this case is not Miss Walker, and it's not the students or the parents. It's definitely Mr. Forbes or Principal Forbes. It seems like he's so concerned with his reputation and image as being the best principal that it's preventing him from actually being the best principal. He's not supporting his teachers, he's not modeling good behavior, he's not promoting integrity, fairness, or ethical behavior. So this school is just kind of in the point where everybody is doing things that serve themselves, not working as a team. So my plan of action, I think that before anything can happen, Principal Forbes needs to reflect on his participation or lack of participation in Miss Walker's development as a teacher. He just has to really think about the fact that he's putting his ego first, and he's not modeling ethics, fairness, or integrity. And the first step after his reflection, is for him to call Miss Walker back and ask her if it's okay if he calls the police and notifies the police of the threat that's been made on her life. This is really important. This is cyberbullying, and it needs to be taken seriously. The second step in my action plan is for the principal to provide Ms. Walker with all the support she needs. Maybe she's feeling really scared and she's afraid to go and face her students the next day. Maybe she needs to take a personal day or 2 personal days. Maybe it's not in Ms. Walker's best interest to be put in a meeting to talk to those students who are potentially the ones who have committed the crime. So I think that Principal Forbes needs to spend more time talking to Ms. Walker and getting to know her and knowing what kind of support she needs in this situation. The third step in the action plan is to work with the police to find out who sent Ms. Walker the message and where it came from. And then the fourth step would be to follow all the district policies and procedures in dealing with cyber bullies. And that includes working with the police and following those state or federal laws, because you have to keep in mind that it might not even be a student who made this website. It could even be a parent or someone other than a student or a parent. So the final work that needs to be done to resolve this case is really to look toward the future. So after we've solved the problem with this particular instance of cyberbullying, we need to be proactive. Principal Forbes needs to realize that to really have a great school and to really be the best president, he needs to get rid of his pedestals and his high horses and get his school together and working as a team. Alright, so the strategies for my plan of action. First, Principal Forbes needs to initiate a learning organization by apologizing to Ms. Walker, the students, the parents, and all the other faculty for his egoism getting in the way of teamwork. He needs to really lay it out there and be transparent and authentic. Principal Forbes also needs to promote the learning organization by employing transformational and that authentic leadership. He needs to be open and honest with his faculty and model integrity, fairness, and ethical behavior. Also, Principal Forbes needs to support teachers in the learning organization. He can do this in a variety of ways, including creating a mentor program to help teachers to improve their skills and their knowledge. Principal Forbes also needs to invite the community to be involved in the learning organization. As the school stands right now, parents are just getting angry and they're calling him, and they're not having the proper outlet to voice their opinions. So I think it would be a great idea for Principal Forbes to ask the parents or help them to found a PTA where conflicts of interest can be discussed in a forum that's open with trust and people can really kind of hash out their problems. So we're thinking about resolving the issues and promoting student success. So during this case study, we're always thinking of what's best for the students. So in my opinion, implementing a learning organization is going to benefit students in a multitude of ways. First, teachers are going to flourish through a mentor program. Also, all the members of the organization, their needs will be met, because that's one of the defining keys of a learning organization. Also, preventative measures will be taken to avoid student misbehavior, like an anti-bullying program. And in a learning organization, all parties learn to take responsibility for their conduct within that group. So, data from the case that supports the strategies in my plan of action. First of all, Principal Forbes doesn't spend enough time mentoring or supporting his teachers. And there's some data that supports this with the quote that although Dr. Forbes has discussed techniques Ms. Walker can use to reduce stress, she hasn't successfully implemented his suggestions. And as far as we know in the case, he hasn't done anything beyond this. He just has parents calling him angrily, and he's not doing anything, so something needs to be done. Secondly, Principal Forbes coddles his parents and students at the expense of teachers. So he understood Ms. Walker's concern when she felt scared or nervous about the cyberbullying, but he told her that he sincerely believed that the email and web page was a prank. this isn't fair. This isn't fair for his teachers, and it's not right to continue to coddle parents and students in this way because then their behavior will never change. So he's not modeling integrity, fairness, or ethical behavior at all. So something needs to be done about this. Also, thirdly, Principal Forbes is definitely not focused on meeting the needs of a learning organization. Um, in a quote, it tells us that he's an established principal, respected by parents, and focused on maintaining a reputation as principal of the most prestigious school in the state. And that's what he cares about. He's only focused on maintaining his reputation at the expense of his teachers, at the expense of modeling integrity, fairness, and ethical behavior for his students and for the parents of his students. So something needs to be done. So while working through the case, I was thinking about a lot of things. First, I felt that Dr. Forbes was an arrogant man who would be terribly difficult to work with. I also thought that Principal Forbes really hadn't made an effort to establish a learning organization. And finally, I thought that Principal Forbes just really didn't seem to have people skills. There were several things that I was feeling during the case. First, I felt empathy for the new teacher because I've also experienced administration like this that's extremely unsupportive. I was also really shocked that Principal Forbes didn't offer to call the police or give Miss Walker any sort of emotional or physical support. He just kind of, shrugged her off. And finally, I felt truly angry that any teacher would have to experience what Miss Walker was experiencing with Principal Forbes as her leader. While I was working through the case, I was valuing several things. First, I reasoned that Principal Forbes must have some good qualities to have been voted Principal of the Year. They're just hidden somewhere under that ego. I also recognized that Principal Forbes wasn't being unsupportive with Miss Walker in an attempt to be nasty. It was just more like unintentional neglect of duty. So he's not, cold-hearted. And lastly, I know that Miss Walker is not completely blameless in this situation. If she was having problems with her students, she should have sought help. But, you can't put all the blame on one person. So in the case, there are some unresolved issues. Even though my plan of action lays out several steps to be taken to start to create that learning organization, Miss Walker and her classroom need to be dealt with on a one-on-one level. Principal Forbes needs to make an extra effort to really mentor Miss Walker and get her some extra training. Also, beyond implementing that learning organization and creating an anti-bullying program, students, I think, could really benefit from an atmosphere that doesn't emphasize grades so much. I mean, they're really stressed out at this school. And thirdly, Principal Forbes might consider conducting teaching interviews with teaching candidates before he hires them so he can see the style of future teachers and really choose teachers that are going to kind of fit into the learning organization that's been established. So thinking about Standard 5 with this case and integrity, modeling integrity in Standard 5, I think that Principal Forbes is going to change his focus from being the best principal to being the best learning organization with my plan of action. So in a learning organization, everything is done for the best of the group, not the individual. And also, Principal Forbes is going to support all members of the learning organization equally if he follows my action plan. Continuing with Standard 5 and looking at fairness, Principal Forbes is going to treat all members of the learning organization in a fair and consistent way by adhering to the district and state policies and by calling the police to report the threat on Miss Walker's life. Also, Principal Forbes is going to establish a forum, so like a PTA, where all the voices in the learning organization can be heard in a fair way, and of course with that expectation of ethical behavior. And finally, continuing with Standard 5, but looking at ethical behavior, with my action plan, Principal Forbes is going to establish and promote an anti-bullying program in the school that will discuss ethical behavior with students. And one important discussion is taking responsibility for your own actions. Also, Principal Forbes is going to set up a teacher mentoring program in which he will be an active participant, and this will help him to model personal and professional ethics to his teachers. Well, that's my case study. Thank you for listening.